What if Vegeta crashed into the Toad Realm? This timeline is officially shattered.
Deep within the sacred and ancient lands of Mount Myoboku, the great Toad Sage slumbers peacefully, navigating the mystical currents of a world-saving prophecy. But suddenly, his serene vision of a blue-eyed savior is violently ripped apart, completely consumed by a blinding, overwhelming golden sun of pure destruction. The ancient sage trembles uncontrollably as the very fabric of their reality begins to warp, signaling an impossible anomaly that defies all known chakra laws. High above the sacred toad oil waterfalls, the tranquil sky violently cracks open, revealing a terrifying vortex of dark, chaotic multidimensional energy. The mystical atmosphere is instantly crushed by an oppressive, alien gravity that forces the surrounding giant flora to violently bend towards the earth. From the swirling abyss, a searing golden streak shoots out like a meteor, tearing through the sacred clouds with a deafening sonic boom. Elder toads Fukasaku and Shima freeze mid-jump, their tiny eyes locking onto the blazing anomaly as pure dread washes over their ancient faces. The golden meteor accelerates, dragging a trail of blazing friction behind it, completely ignoring the magical barriers protecting the legendary Toad Sanctuary. Plunging diagonally across the heavens, the falling figure locks into a rigid posture, carrying enough kinetic energy to completely obliterate a small mountain. He breaches the final cloud layer, and the sheer atmospheric pressure preceding his body instantly vaporizes the surface of the grand Toad Oil Lake. Impact. A cataclysmic shockwave erupts outward, tearing the ancient lily pads to shreds and sending tidal waves of sacred oil crashing into the cliffs. A colossal mushroom cloud of dust and debris violently punches into the sky, temporarily blocking out the sun and plunging the valley into shadows. Chief Toad Gamabunta watches in sheer disbelief, the massive smoking pipe slipping from his lips as the sheer physical force rattles his giant frame. Deep inside the scorching impact crater, superheated air violently distorts the surrounding space, melting the ancient bedrock into pools of glowing, bubbling magma. As the dense smoke slowly begins to swirl and part, a menacing, humanoid silhouette casually rises from the very center of the absolute devastation. The giant toads instantly snap out of their shock, drawing their massive blades and fully surrounding the steaming crater in a defensive combat formation. Gamabunta steps heavily into the foreground, his giant katana casting a massive shadow over the tiny figure standing defiantly in the smoldering background. A sharp gust of wind finally clears the remaining smoke, revealing the armored Saiyan prince completely unharmed and utterly unbothered by the dramatic landing. Vegeta simply scoffs, casually brushing a few specks of dust off his iconic battle armor with an absolute, insulting level of nonchalance. His cold, sharp eyes slowly scan the towering amphibians, radiating an aura of pure arrogance that makes the native natural energy feel suffocatingly dense. Gamabunta glares down furiously, his massive grip tightening on his sword handle as he senses a terrifying, alien power completely devoid of natural chakra. Unfazed by the giant weapons aimed at his throat, Vegeta visibly cringes at the humid environment, his face contorting into an expression of pure disgust.
What is this filthy swamp? Are you mutated frogs, my welcoming committee? Pathetic!
Fukasaku desperately signals Gamabunta to hold his ground, instantly recognizing that this arrogant intruder operates on a terrifying frequency far beyond their comprehension. Ignoring the tension, Vegeta confidently crosses his arms, a condescending smirk creeping across his face as he calculates the utter weakness of his surroundings. Pushed to his limit by the sheer disrespect, Gamabunta violently slams his massive hand onto the ground, causing the entire valley to violently quake. The resulting shockwave blasts over Vegeta, whipping his spiky hair wildly, but the proud Saiyan doesn't even blink, standing as immovable as a mountain. The visual contrast is staggering, positioning the massive, furious toad towering over the tiny, yet overwhelmingly dominant warrior in a tense, diagonal standoff. Two entirely different universes are now locked in a deadly staring contest, and the peaceful era of the Toad Sages is officially, irreparably over. The air crackles with terrifying static tension as Vegeta's hidden key slightly leaks out, ready to completely subjugate this entire primitive ecosystem in seconds. The giant amphibians waste zero time talking. They instantly synchronize their massive chakra pools, triggering the ultimate defensive mechanism to trap this alien threat. Elder Toads Fukasaku and Shima weave complex hand signs at blinding speeds, tapping directly into the planet's raw natural energy to fuel the trap. Massive kanji furiously carve themselves into the scorched earth, forming a colossal pentagram that completely swallows the smoking crater and their target. The 5-element seal activates. Solid pillars of concentrated natural energy erupt violently from the ground, creating a nearly impenetrable magical cage. Thick, glowing chains forged from raw senjutsu shoot across the battlefield, hunting down the intruder with terrifying, calculated precision. The chains violently wrap around the Saiyan prince, instantly binding his limbs and dragging him down into the absolute center of the seal. This isn't just magic. The senjutsu creates an artificial gravity well, pressing down with the weight of a mountain to crush his life force. Standing completely still in the heart of the vortex, the invader's body is subjected to a soul-draining technique designed to erase gods. Fukasaku bites down hard, sweat pouring down his ancient face as he forces every last drop of the valley's natural energy into the trap. The ethereal chains tighten relentlessly, digging into the iconic armor as the magic attempts to violently siphon away his internal life force. The massive pentagram forcefully collapses inward, forming a dense, inescapable dome of raw senjutsu that entirely seals the anomaly inside. Gamabunta exhales a massive cloud of tension, slightly lowering his blade as the amphibian warriors finally believe the apocalyptic threat has been neutralized. Gamabunta exhales a massive cloud of tension, slightly lowering his blade as the amphibian warriors finally believe the apocalyptic threat has been neutralized. Then, the dead silence is shattered. The corner of his mouth twitches, slowly curling into a smile of pure, unfiltered psychopathy. He violently snaps his eyes open. There is no fear, no fatigue, and absolutely zero respect for the magic attempting to crush him. He slowly lifts his head, audibly scoffing as microscopic sparks of divine blue energy begin to effortlessly dance across his bound body.
You think this pathetic parlor trick is enough to hold a Saiyan elite? Watch and learn!
With a single, aggressive flex of his muscles, a blinding explosion of divine power detonates from his core, instantly overloading the dimensional space. His hair flashes into a vibrant, glowing cyan. He doesn't just power up, he ascends, wrapping himself in the tranquil but absolute terror of God Ki. The sheer, static physical pressure of a god instantly shatters the indestructible senjutsu chains into worthless, dissipating green fragments. Standing across the diagonal battlefield, the visual hierarchy is brutally reset. The giant toads are now nothing but prey facing a literal god. The magical feedback loop is too catastrophic. The 5 massive chakra pillars violently explode outward, completely erasing the ultimate sealing technique. Without even throwing a punch, the static pressure alone physically shoves Gamabunta backward, his massive feet carving deep trenches into the solid bedrock. The entire dimension begins to violently glitch. The overwhelming God Ki actually forces the ancient waterfalls to defy physics and flow entirely in reverse. Slowly levitating above the shattered crater, the Saiyan Prince looks down at the legendary amphibian warriors as if they were merely annoying insects. He casually raises his right hand, effortlessly condensing enough raw, blinding energy to permanently wipe this entire dimension off the multiverse map. Fukasaku's eyes widen in absolute, unfiltered horror. He instantly realizes that tiny, glowing sphere means the complete extinction of their entire ancient species. Throwing his pride away, the elder toad desperately leaps into the line of fire, throwing his arms wide open in absolute, pathetic surrender.
Hold your fire, Destroyer! We can use natural energy to navigate the multiverse and send you home!
The floating god pauses. He doesn't lower his weapon, but his cold, calculating eyes dart downward. The ultimate destroyer is suddenly willing to negotiate.
Will his massive Saiyan ego totally wreck this training? Drop your vote, right now.
The deal is struck. But for a warrior fueled entirely by pure rage, finding absolute stillness on a razor-sharp spike is pure psychological torture. Every single fiber of his Saiyan DNA screams at him to explode, making the simple act of sitting still feel like a literal death sentence. Fukasaku watches closely, knowing perfectly well that mixing violent alien ki with raw natural energy could instantly vaporize the prince from the inside out. His muscles twitch violently. The overwhelming, ingrained desire to crush his enemies is actively sabotaging his ability to absorb the peaceful energy of the earth. Cold sweat pours down his face. This isn't just physical endurance training, it's a brutal, all-out war against his own destructive, warrior identity. Bursts of his golden aura aggressively flash and die out, forcefully rejecting the foreign senjutsu trying to peacefully seep into his battle-hardened core. The elder readies his striking staff, fully prepared to forcefully knock the natural energy out of him before a catastrophic, irreversible failure happens. Deep inside his mind, the primal great ape roars in absolute defiance, furiously clawing against the suffocating chains of meditative silence. The physical environment violently reacts to his internal chaos. The sacred oil pools begin to boil, and the ancient stone spikes vibrate with dangerous tension. The razor-sharp pinnacle beneath him begins to shatter under the immense, suppressed gravitational pressure of his violently conflicted aura. He forces a deep, agonizing breath. He has to completely break his own royal ego down to absolute zero, or he's never getting home. Slowly, microscopic streams of pure emerald natural energy begin to swirl around his body, violently clashing with his latent warrior ki. The pain is completely unimaginable. It feels like thousands of burning needles are simultaneously piercing through his skin straight into his soul. The iconic Saiyan armor groans under the expanding density of his muscles as the planetary chakra brutally forces its way inside. The elder toad screams a warning, sensing the massive influx of raw energy is completely bypassing the prince's ability to control it safely.
Stop absorbing! You're taking in too much nature energy. Break the meditation!
But the prince completely ignores the warning. His insane pride refuses to let him fail at a technique mastered by a simple ninja. A chaotic vortex of raw wind and emerald light engulfs the peak, completely obscuring his body in a terrifying storm of pure natural power. The fatal consequence begins. Thick, gray petrification rapidly spreads across his left arm, turning his living flesh into cold, lifeless stone. The horrific transformation crawls up his neck, threatening to permanently immortalize the prince of all Saiyans as a pathetic, lifeless garden statue. Fukasaku desperately lunges through the air, violently swinging his heavy wooden staff to strike the prince and forcibly sever the fatal chakra connection. Milliseconds before impact, Vegeta snaps his eyes open. The irises burn with an intense, furious yellow light, completely halting the elder's desperate strike.
Don't you dare touch me! I dictate my own limits, amphibian!
Pure, unadulterated Saiyan arrogance overrides the laws of nature. The solid stone encasing his body violently shatters under the sheer force of his willpower. The visual hierarchy shifts violently. The elder is blown backward as the prince forcefully crushes the petrification, absolutely refusing to be consumed by the earth. He doesn't just balance the energies, he brutally forces the wild planetary senjutsu to submit and fuse directly with his own divine god ki. A catastrophic explosion of interdimensional colors erupts from his core, tearing away the atmospheric haze and violently shaking the entire sacred mountain. The blinding, aggressive blue aura begins to warp, seamlessly bleeding into a serene, glowing emerald green that radiates absolute, terrifying tranquility. The smoke completely clears. He stands tall, wrapped in an ethereal flame, with the iconic orange markings of a sage framing his cold eyes. The chaotic environment instantly freezes. The violent winds die down, and the roaring waterfalls fall perfectly silent under his absolute, godlike control. He smirks, the paradox fully realized. He has successfully weaponized the absolute stillness of nature into the ultimate, unstoppable form of aggressive destruction. The sheer mass of this newly forged, paradoxical energy is too heavy for reality. It aggressively pushes against the absolute limits of the dimension. The fabric of space literally fractures. A jagged, temporary dimensional rift tears violently open, bleeding dark, chaotic energy right above the sacred sanctuary. Miles away in the human realm, Pain's animal path instantly locks onto this massive spatial glitch while relentlessly hunting for the Ninetales. Wasting zero time, the ruthless Akatsuki puppet weaves blinding hand signs, aggressively hijacking the open rift to drop a lethal surprise on the anomaly. Back in the Toad realm, a massive black summoning formula violently stamps itself across the open tear, instantly corrupting the serene sky. An absolutely colossal cloud of summoning smoke detonates mid-air, plummeting toward the sacred ground like a heavy, suffocating avalanche. The giant multi-headed dog bursts violently from the smoke. It crashes into the bedrock, instantly shattering the absolute tranquility of the dimension. Right behind it, a colossal armored centipede slithers in at terrifying speeds, effortlessly grinding the ancient, sacred statues into worthless powder. The rabid beast snaps its jaws wildly, tearing through the sacred flora as it desperately hunts for the source of the massive energy spike. The centipede violently smashes into the tranquil oil waterfalls, totally corrupting the pristine environment with a filthy, destructive rampage. The beasts finally lock onto their target. Their glowing Rinnegan eyes focus entirely on the tiny, radiant figure meditating deep in the background. With zero hesitation, all heads open their jaws simultaneously, unleashing an ear-splitting, concussive bark meant to paralyze their glowing prey. The invisible sonic shockwave violently rips through the air, completely obliterating the ancient rock formations as it barrels toward the silent prince. The massive attack hits his divine aura and instantly dissipates into harmless wind. He doesn't budge a single millimeter. He remains perfectly still. But under the surface, his left eyebrow twitches violently. The absolute limit of his forced patience is breaking. Undeterred, the colossal centipede aggressively slithers up the rocky spire, its massive mandibles snapping violently as it moves in for the kill. The armored beast violently lunges forward, opening its horrifying jaws to completely swallow the glowing prey in a single, brutal strike. His patience snaps. He violently opens his eyes, completely shattering his meditative state with an expression of pure, unfiltered murderous wrath. His irises burn a piercing lemon yellow, framed perfectly by the thick, iconic orange pigmentation of a true, undisputed sage of destruction. An absolutely massive shockwave of pure god ki explodes outward, forcefully hitting the lunging centipede like a solid wall of iron. The colossal beast is violently repelled backward, its massive armored body twisting helplessly in the air before brutally crashing into the rocks below. Slowly, deliberately, the prince stands up. The serene balance is completely gone, replaced by a divine aura flaring aggressively like a raging wildfire. The giant dog scrambles to its feet in the foreground, foolishly growling at the glowing god levitating effortlessly in the distance. He looks down his nose at the towering beasts, his face contorted into an expression of absolute, venomous disgust at the pathetic interruption. He casually raises his hand, effortlessly forming a hyperdense orb of energy that completely warps the gravity in the surrounding area. For the first time, the mindless beasts freeze in place, their primal instincts finally recognizing the absolute, apocalyptic danger hovering right above them.
You gotta be kidding me! Dragging your filthy paws into my zone? You're literally dead meat!
With a single, disgusted thrust of his hand, the Prince of All Science unleashes a beam of pure destruction to vaporize the intruders completely. At the very last millisecond, he crushes the energy blast. Firing a massive ki wave now would completely destabilize his newly fused, fragile chakra. To perfectly maintain this delicate elemental balance, he completely shuts off his long-range attacks. It's time to rely on pure, unadulterated physical brutality. Seeing the glowing god lower his weapon, the rabid multi-headed beast lunges forward, foolishly thinking the prince is suddenly vulnerable without his flashy beams. But these mindless summons have absolutely no idea that a Scion's true, terrifying power lies entirely in their devastating hand-to-hand combat skills. In less than a microsecond, the glowing warrior completely bridges the gap, driving a concentrated punch directly into the beast's massive jaw. The physical impact is absolute nightmare fuel. A single strike generates enough raw kinetic force to literally cave in the monster's reinforced skull. The colossal beast staggers backward, its multiple brains completely scrambled by the overwhelming, unfiltered physical strength of a literal god of destruction. The creature desperately swings its massive, razor-sharp claws, but the prince effortlessly catches the gigantic strike using absolutely nothing but one hand.
That's it? I expected a lot more from a giant mutt. Time to put you down.
Defying all known laws of physical mass, he uses terrifying leverage to literally lift the multi-ton monstrosity completely off the shattered battlefield. He violently slams the giant canine directly into the bedrock, causing a devastating localized earthquake that brutally shatters the entire surrounding canyon. Pinned down and broken, the beast furiously snaps its remaining heads, desperately attempting to sink its massive fangs into his impenetrable aura. But the prince simply reaches out, brutally digging his heavy, gloved fingers deep into the monster's massive upper and lower jaws. There is absolutely no mercy in those glowing yellow eyes, only the cold, deeply calculated intent to completely butcher the Akatsuki intruder. Applying pure, explosive physical force, he violently rips the beast's jaws completely apart, instantly neutralizing the monstrous threat in a spray of blood. The lifeless, utterly shattered body of the giant canine instantly vaporizes, violently expanding into a massive cloud of dense white summoning smoke. But before the thick smoke can even settle, the colossal centipede aggressively slithers in from the flank, aiming for a lethal blindside strike. Relying entirely on his newly acquired sage sensory abilities, he casually sidesteps the massive, snapping armored mandibles without even bothering to look. As the beast flies past, he violently grabs its heavy antennae, completely halting its terrifying forward momentum with absolute, effortless physical ease. Using the horrific beast's own massive weight entirely against it, he forcefully swings the heavy, armored body high into the stormy, fractured sky. He brings it crashing back down onto the jagged rocks with sickening force, completely shattering its supposedly impenetrable, magical exoskeleton into useless fragments. Leaping high into the turbulent air, the glowing warrior readies a devastating, gravity-assisted stomp aimed directly at the creature's exposed, shattered head. His boots violently connect with the beast's skull, completely crushing it into the earth and violently ending the Akatsuki invasion in an instant. The dust slowly settles around the undisputed victor. He didn't just beat them, he absolutely humiliated the most terrifying summons the ninja world had. Above the devastated battlefield, the violent spatial rift finally stabilizes, tearing open a direct, glowing dimensional gateway back to his own universe.
Bro, wait, the dimensional frequencies are crossing? Don't tell me Naruto is about to accidentally summon him.
The gateway to his universe is finally wide open. The Saiyan Prince slowly levitates toward the exit, ready to leave this primitive dimension behind forever. Meanwhile, across the multiverse, the Leaf Village is completely leveled. In a desperate final play, Naruto bites his thumb, initiating the ultimate backup plan. But right as Vegeta reaches the threshold, the multidimensional coordinates violently glitch. A massive summoning formula forcibly anchors itself to his divine chakra. Pouring every last drop of his sage energy into the shattered earth, the desperate ninja attempts to pull the chief toad directly onto the battlefield. The cosmic GPS completely freaks out. The jutsu's homing signal aggressively tangles with the open multidimensional gateway, forcefully hijacking the destination. The prince looks down in sheer annoyance. An entirely foreign, primitive spatial force is aggressively attempting to drag his physical body backward.
Summoning Jutsu!
The stable gateway violently collapses inward. The spatial glitch is absolute. Instead of heading home, the god of destruction is forcefully redirected. Clicking his tongue in pure irritation, he doesn't even bother resisting as the hijacked jutsu violently rips him completely out of the Toad realm. Back in the Leaf Village, an absolutely colossal explosion of thick white smoke detonates in the center of the crater, signaling the arrival of heavy backup. Hovering silently above the absolute destruction, the leader of the Akatsuki narrows his Rinnegan eyes, completely unimpressed by the desperate ninja's final attempt. Exhausted but deeply hopeful, the young hero smirks at the massive smoke cloud, fully expecting a giant warrior toad to turn the tide of the war. But as the thick smoke slowly begins to thin out, the massive silhouette is completely missing. Standing in the center is a terrifyingly small, heavily armored figure. For the very first time, the fake god's emotionless face twitches. He instantly senses an impossibly dense, suffocating pressure completely devoid of normal chakra. An aggressive burst of divine energy violently blows the remaining smoke completely away, exposing the ultimate glitch in the multidimensional system. The Prince of all Saiyan stands in the dead center of the ruined village, his arms crossed, his face locked in an expression of absolute, murderous irritation. The hero's jaw literally drops open. He was fully expecting a giant, sword-wielding toad, but instead, he just accidentally summoned a literal god of destruction. The battlefield hierarchy shifts instantly. The fake god of this world is now locked in a tense, diagonal standoff against an actual, undisputed universal destroyer. His glowing yellow sage eyes slowly scan the utterly destroyed landscape, absorbing the pathetic scenery before finally locking his deadly, unblinking gaze onto the floating puppet.
I was literally 1 second away from going home. Which one of you insects just hijacked my portal?
The self-proclaimed god of the ninja world makes his move. Pain raises his hand, preparing to wipe this arrogant anomaly off the map.
Know your place, mortal. Almighty push!
A devastating wave of raw gravity erupts from the Akatsuki leader, violently ripping the shattered bedrock into a lethal tidal wave of debris. The apocalyptic shockwave barrels toward the Saiyan, carrying enough kinetic force to instantly flatten an entire metropolitan city without breaking a sweat. But the undisputed prince of all Saiyans doesn't even flinch. He stands perfectly still, radiating an aura of absolute, insulting arrogance. The devastating attack hits his divine aura and instantly splits apart, violently deflecting off him like a gentle, harmless summer breeze. Pain's cold, emotionless eyes widen in genuine shock. His ultimate, unbeatable jutsu was completely ignored by pure, unfiltered physical pressure. Naruto watches in pure horror. The villain who effortlessly destroyed his entire village is absolutely nothing compared to this glowing, spiky-haired god. Vegeta completely ignores his attacker. Instead, his cold yellow eyes dart upward toward the sky, sensing a massive, infuriating spatial shift. High above the battlefield, the cosmic dimensional portal violently shrinks and snaps shut, forcibly cancelled by Naruto's overriding summoning coordinates. The serene balance shatters instantly. Pure, unadulterated Saiyan wrath violently erupts, completely darkening the sky with an unbelievably heavy murderous intent. Before anyone can even process the danger, the Saiyan simply vanishes from reality, leaving only a sonic boom and scorched earth. Bypassing all known laws of physics, he instantly reappears point-blank, driving a single, devastating punch straight through the fake god's pathetic guard. The impact is absolute. Pain's invincible body violently shatters into worthless debris, instantly ending the Akatsuki's entire reign of terror in one hit.
You just closed my exit, kid. Prepare to be erased.
Bro, he literally one-tapped Pain like a random NPC. That was absolutely insane. Does Naruto even survive this? Drop your craziest theories in the comments and hit subscribe right now.